Hello, good evening, everyone. CEJ community. I am your host, Rabeen Nickens. Welcome to Culturally Responsive Text. We are just waiting for a few more people to come in. In the meantime, why don't you drop an emoji, a word, or a GIF, or some people say GIF in the chat to see how you're feeling today. We want to know how everybody's feeling as we embark on this wonderful journey of learning and of sharing. And actually, we actually have a wonderful, wonderful guest, Ricardo, our Spanish translator, who would like to just say one brief thing to you right now. Ricardo, are you at the ready? Are you in the house?
Hi, thank you. Buenas tardes. Los organizadores del evento de hoy tienen la firme determinación de crear un espacio multilingüe y con esa finalidad contamos con interpretación disponible en español, inglés. Les pedimos a todos los participantes que hablen lentamente y en voz alta y clara en sus micrófonos para facilitar la interpretación. Al terminar este anuncio, activaremos la función de interpretación. Y si usted está usando la aplicación de Zoom, podrá ver el icono de un mundo en la parte abajo de su pantalla. Haga clic en el icono del mundo para escuchar la interpretación y seleccione español. Si usted está usando la aplicación Zoom, desde su teléfono, haga clic en los tres puntitos donde dice More, seleccione Language Interpretation y después Español. Si tiene algún problema al hacer esto, por favor escriba un comentario en el chat. Gracias. Hi, the organizers of today's event have made a strong commitment to creating a multilingual space. To that end, we have interpretation available in Spanish and English. We ask that all participants speak slowly, loud, and clear into their microphones to make the interpretation easier. Right after this announcement, we will activate the interpretation feature, and if you're using the Zoom application, you will see a globe icon at the bottom of your screen. To listen to interpretation, click on the globe and select English. If you are using Zoom on your phone, click on the three dots where it says More, choose Language Interpretation, and select English. If you have any problems doing this, please comment in the chat box. Thank you.
All right, yes, and we are so grateful. Bienvenido to everybody. I think you're on mute. Oh.
Hold on one moment. I have to put him in the alternate dimension. So now that the globe is available, select your language, including you as the facilitator. So
not sure what that means.
So everyone should be able to see the little globey icon at the bottom of the toolbar now, because it's activated. So you want to select if you are an English only speaker. You want to select English. If you are a monolingual Spanish speaker, you want to select Spanish. The only folks who don't have to select anything are those who are Spanish-English bilingual.
Which is not me because I speak Spanglish. So thank you for that. All right. So we'll maybe just take another 30 seconds or so for people to get their translation in. Register that. Again, bienvenido. Lo siento porque mi español es solo así, pero tenemos ayuda de Ricardo, un caballero de idiomas de todo el mundo. So that's about as much as you're going to get for that from me tonight. I'm going to leave that to Ricardo. But in any case, we also have the wonderful Elizabeth on the Wheels of Steel, aka the PowerPoint slides. And we also have the wonderful Empress Natasha of CEJ also supporting with dropping in some wonderful links in the chat. So we're going to use the chat quite a bit tonight. I'm wondering if maybe we can start by just projecting the first screen. Again, please do drop in the chat an emoji or a word or a GIF that says how you're feeling tonight. So I'm gonna drop something in the chat right now. I'm feeling invigorated, and that says a lot for me in the middle of the week because I am a doctoral student and I work full time. So a lot of times I am very tired. but I am feeling invigorated. So Ricardo, if we can, it's going to be simultaneous. So y'all understanding me. So again, whether you put a smiley face, a frowny face, or maybe you feeling like our sister Viola there is like, I'm done with this day. Whatever it is, pop it in the chat. Let's see how people are feeling today. Oh. Okay, well, not all of us are putting in things in the chat, but that's okay because we communicate in other ways. We're gonna move on to the next slide. And once again, I want to welcome you and just do a little introductions. I'll start with myself. My name is Rabeen Nickens, and I am a lifelong educator, 20 years in the New York City Department of Education. I used to coach in Harlem and in Maspeth, Queens, and now I'm a coach, consultant, project director for a wonderful organization called MSQI, which stands for Middle School Quality Initiative. And with the support of folks like CEJ, we've been able over the years to support teachers and dedicated school leaders and helping with teaching and learning and leadership and literacy. So that reading, that writing, that speaking, but that also understanding the world from a culturally responsive lens. So I'm so proud to be partnering with CEJ today. Also an aunt, a sister, a really good friend, a proud native New Yorker born in East New York. And again, as I mentioned earlier, I'm currently a doctoral student. So, I learn from school, but I learn also from engaging with you all. So I can't wait for us to engage tonight. But let's find out a little bit more about you, shall we? Can we go to the next slide? So I know that there's a lot of diverse people in this room. There's parents. So if you're a parent or part of La Familia, the estudiantes, if you're somebody that is someone that has a child in schools, please put a number 1 in the chat. If you're a teacher, put a number 2. If you are a student, we definitely want to hear from you. Put a number 3. If you are one of our wonderful administrators, executive leaders in a school, a principal or AP, put a number 4 in the chat. A librarian, a guidance counselor, we need you, especially now with the digital literacy. Please put 5. And if you're a community member, not one of those, but you're just interested in seeing what's going on and learning and supporting, please put a number 6. So I'm just going to give us about a minute to do that. And let's see who's in the house. Okay, we got a parent, a family member. Welcome, bienvenido. And this time I think I'll let Naz do a little playing. Oh, wow, we have a doctor, a pediatrician. Yes, we definitely need you these days. Thank you, Jane, for being here.
Thank you for being there.
Oh, thank you, Blanca. I'm glad you're happy. Hopefully that will radiate to us. And who are you, Blanca? Put a 1, 2, or 3, 4, 5, or 6 to let us know a little bit more about you. Right. Family members in the house. Welcome, Veronica. Veronica in the house. All right, that's very important, that role, definitely. Okay, maybe we take it like maybe another 30 seconds. Ricardo is doing this thing translating, so we're gonna give that space and time. All right. So wonderful to have so many family members in the house and a community member. Welcome, Sharina. And those that really take care of the home, because, you know, we forget that those are essential workers too. If you are taking care of a household, you are essential. Okay. And we want to appreciate you and honor you with this session tonight. So we're going to go to the next slide and just talk a little bit about what we're here for today. So if you're here, you're going to gain an understanding of just what culturally responsive text is. And, you know, because we use a lot of these terms, culturally responsive, cultural relevance, but what do we mean by that? And we're going to explore a tool to help you to identify culturally responsive text or books in order to support your child's learning and partner with teachers and with schools. So especially if you're taking care of a home, you have a child in schools, you'll really appreciate this today, because it'll help you to dialogue and know, you know, what your teachers are going through in terms of picking the right books and texts for your child. So we're going to have a little discussion about it. We're going to explore a tool that you can use, and then we're actually going to practice with it. We're going to actually have some text that we're going to use, and then we're going to talk about, okay, so what? What can you do out in the community with this information? Next slide, please. So just some community agreements. I'm not going to read them all. I think probably the most important one is for us just to uphold a collaborative spirit. So that means participating. So I know sometimes some of us don't want to speak out loud, but, you know, unmute your mic at times, you know, when it's open for discussion, and share your ideas, because I'm not the only one with knowledge in here. We have a doctor, we have community members, we have housekeepers, we have teachers. So we want to definitely hear from everyone. Okay, so that's probably one of the most important community agreements. So I hope everybody can adhere to that. We'll go to the next slide. And just as you know, again, if you're not really familiar with this platform, with Zoom, we're going to communicate and talk via the chat feature. We're going to talk via the chat. So you're just going to type in, it might be a number, it might be some words. But again, if you're not comfortable with typing, you know, you can actually speak out loud. We'll have the opportunity for both. So because we want to hear from everybody. Thank you so much. We'll go to the next slide. All right, so let's get right into it, the nitty gritty. What do we mean by culturally responsive teaching? What do we mean by culturally responsive text? Well, I put a big circle over there in the middle to talk a little bit about what we mean by that. And I also put the name of this scholar, Dr. Gloria Ladson Billings, because if you've heard these terms before about cultural relevancy or cultural responsiveness, Dr. Gloria Ladson Billings is the scholar that actually really coined that terminology. She uses culturally relevant pedagogy, and some people say culturally responsive, meaning the same thing. So for this purposes of this workshop, we're going to talk about them in the same boat. And what we mean by that is a pedagogical approach. That means a teaching approach that recognizes the importance of students' cultural references in all aspects of their learning. So it really empowers students by using their own references to support their knowledge, their skills, their attitudes, okay? But it's not that simple. It has many different parts, which is why we have those little satellites, those little tiny circles or planets around it. It involves teacher recognition, like the teacher thinking about, well, what is my background? What is my experience with culture and diversity? You know, what are maybe some of my implicit biases that might show up? Then it's the curriculum, what the teachers teach. It's the instruction, how do teachers teach? And then high expectations. No matter what type of students, even students who come from socioeconomic backgrounds where maybe there's a lot of poverty in their community, even students that are not English as a first language, we still have high expectations for them. And we have to meet those expectations by supporting them. If you're calling yourself culturally responsive, that's part of what you do. And even though there's a lot of different scholars that have built off of Dr. Gloria Ladson-Billings' work, almost all of them will say that cultural responsiveness or cultural relevancy also involves family and community engagement. Basically what we're doing right now, involving everybody and also trying to be responsive to their needs, and thinking about their differences and how we're responding to that, how we're actually trying to engage with them. But the reason why I put culturally responsive text in that little star is because we're not going to talk about all that in just a few minutes, in the next 40 minutes. That would be quite a bit. And I definitely encourage you to go out and explore more about that. Today, we're going to focus on the books, the text. What do we mean by that? And how do we begin to be able to select this for our own children at home? Because a lot of us are also teachers. Almost everybody here is a teacher or somebody that cares about a child. And it kind of lives in that area between curriculum and instruction, okay? So when we talk about culturally responsive text, is what's actually being used in the classroom, and it affects how teachers teach. So we'll go on to the next slide. So Dr. Rudine Sims Bishop, another wonderful scholar, has helped us to understand what is meant by culturally responsive text by writing an article entitled Mirrors, Windows, and Sliding Glass Doors. I'll have the full article in a resource folder for you at the end of this session, but for now, we're just going to look at an excerpt, and I'm going to read it to you. She gives us an idea of culturally responsive text in 3 different ways. Listen and see if you kind of get what she means by this. Books are sometimes windows, offering views of the worlds that may be real or imagined, familiar or strange. These windows are also sliding glass doors, and readers have only to walk through in imagination to become part of whatever world has been created or recreated by the author. When lighting conditions are just right, however, a window can also be a mirror. Literature transforms human experience and reflects it back to us. And in that reflection, we see our own lives and experiences as part of the larger human experience. Reading then becomes a means of self-affirmation, and readers often seek their mirrors in books. So I know that was a lot, but I have a little graphic right at the bottom to kind of summarize a bit of what she means. So if a book is culturally responsive, it could be culturally responsive in 3 ways. It could be a mirror, meaning the reader, the child, sees themselves in some way, shape, or form reflected in that book. They can relate. Oh, this character or this topic or this setting or this situation is like me or what I'm going through. It can be a window. You know what? I'm looking at this text and maybe it's not about me particularly, but it also really gets me interested in another perspective, another person's life, another person's culture, another person's situation. That would be a window. And that would also be culturally responsive in its own way. And then it could be a sliding glass door. It could be a text where the student or your child is looking at it and they're saying, you know what? This makes me think of like worlds and scenarios and possibilities I never thought. It helps me to dream. It helps me to look forward. It helps me to imagine. These are all different ways that books can be culturally responsive. So it's not just one thing. But we'll go to the next slide. I want to give you an opportunity to take a look at some more of what Dr. Rudine Sims Bishop has to say about this by looking at some of the quotes from the text. So I have this activity and you'll get a few minutes to do it. And there are 4 quotes from the article and they're all about culturally responsive text and the importance of culturally responsive text. Now we've got a lot of people from all over the city in the house. So I'm gonna say if you are from the Boogie Down Bronx, please choose quote number 1 to read and to think about. And you can drop in the chat the number 1 and say what you think about that. When you read that quote, what does it make you think? If you're from Brooklyn, yes, the Brooklyn, choose quote number 2. If you're from Queens, choose quote number 3. And if you're from Manhattan or Staten Island, you can choose quote number 4. So for example, I'll just model I'm from Manhattan, although I was born in Brooklyn. And so I might put the number 4 in the chat. And then I might say, the quote says, if they see only reflections of themselves, they will grow up with an exaggerated sense of their own importance and value in a world and value in the world a dangerous ethnocentrism. Okay. So that makes me think when I look at that. So I'm typing number 4 in the chat. It makes me think, it means that we need to, and I'll type that down. We need to expose children to other cultures so they know it's more than about themselves, talking about life, okay? So I've just popped that into the chat. So that's an example of how you can reflect and respond. So we're gonna give you about 4 minutes to read the quote, whichever quote that you choose. And you can type in the chat, or if you're not comfortable typing, just be prepared to share. So I'll keep the time. We'll come back together at, I talked a little bit about 6:26, 6:27. We'll come on back and I'll play a little music as you're reading and responding. Mm. 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 Okay. Whew. So, we got one more. Okay. All right. And thank you for that translation. Okay. So let's take some time to look at the responses in the chat. I'll just give you a few seconds to do that. Whether you responded or not, that there's some very interesting insights there. So I would like to open it up for people to share verbally. We have a lot of different learners and a lot of different ways in which we can communicate. Would somebody like to share a little bit more about what they mean by what they put in their response to these quotes? You can unmute the mic. So whether that's Jane or Sharina, thank you so much for sharing. Okay, so I'm gonna read out, unless you're sharing and maybe your mic is muted and you don't know it. Okay, because I can't see faces right now, but I'm gonna read, if you don't mind, what Jane said. Jane said she picked number 4, that quote that I did, and she said, present preponderance of white characters in children's books. A present preponderance of white characters in children's books reinforces the majority status and narcissism. Wow. And thank you so much for using that word preponderance, because a lot of it is about a balance, right? Because again, we want students, all students, to have perspectives on other cultures, but it needs to be a balance. It can't be just about them. It should be, if we want to build global citizens, if we want to build understanding, we want to definitely have them be able to understand other cultures. And it happens with the books that we present them at home and at school. Let's see, what else? Okay, Barbara said that in response to quote number 2, they learn about other people and themselves. Yes, again, we're talking about that balance. We're on a trend. We're on a trend here, people. We're like-minded. We're talking about a little bit of both. Okay, it's not one or the other when we talk about cultural responsiveness. All right, Sharina. Okay, we got some hot parent family community member fire here. They need books, again, in regards to Brooklyn in the house, quote number 2. They need books that support cultural curiosity. Oh my gosh, I love that. I forgot that there's some people on the Facebook, so I realize now that you might not be able to share out. But if Sharina was in this Zoom chat, I would love for her to expand upon that. But cultural curiosity, just marinate on that for a second. Cultural curiosity. Do we make
Greetings, fam? This is Sharina.
Oh, okay, great, Sharina. Let me not speak for you. Can you expand on what you meant by cultural curiosity?
Sure. So, and naturally, children are curious. So we need spaces in books that support that expansion and possibility of not just being single dimensional. So all the intersectionals of who we are as human beings. So culturally, historically, spiritually, all those different pieces, and promoting language and the opportunity to seek and ask questions and have them play with it. So books that expand that, so books that are expansive and not narrow. I hope that made sense.
And again, if you would like Sharina to drop more hot fire like she just did and expand upon that, please do. But one of the things that really resonated with me, thank you so much, Sharina, is that she mentioned that it's more than just culture. It can relate in terms of your historical context. It can relate in terms of your spirituality. Sometimes we just look at color, culture, that sort of thing, but it expands so much, or it spans so much. Thank you so much for that. Oh my gosh, we got some more here. Oh, great. Thank you so much for participating. Someone said in response to number 4, oh, we got a lot of Manhattanites here, I see. Children need to know different cultures and use, oh, yes, children need to know different cultures. Yes. Okay. So I'm not sure who said that. I think Natasha might have translated that, but again, yeah, it's about opening it up to everybody. And what's really great about what we're saying tonight is because I suspect that a lot of us are talking about what some would term the majority culture or white children. Culturally responsive text is not just for BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Okay. And culturally responsive text benefits all children. I taught for a couple of years in Maspeth, Queens. I did teach in Harlem. Most of my roots as an educator are in Harlem with predominantly Black and Latinx communities. But when I taught in Maspeth, Queens, I had mostly Polish, Irish, so everybody can benefit. Thank you so much, you wonderful teachers. Everybody on here is a teacher tonight, for sharing that. We're going to go to the next slide. And you know, you basically summed it up. I mean, I put some things here, but you kind of bring that out. Like, we're not just talking about fiction or nonfiction, you know, stories or informational text. All text that we use, we should think about the extent to which it presents the life and the reality of our children in some way. Okay. Especially if we're talking about it as mirrors. Okay. And if we are talking about it as mirrors, the reader might find that there are many different ways in which they relate, not just culture. It could be the experiences of the characters, the place or the setting, even if they're not of the same culture, the age. Maybe it's a child that's not of your same culture or race, but you know what? They're a teenager just like you. They're a preteen just like you. They're a toddler just like you. Or gender and gender identity. Sometimes we don't think about that. Okay, or language, or our speech patterns. I know I go back and forth between, you know, standard English, and sometimes I speak my African American vernacular, which I love. It's so unique. But is that reflected in my books, in the things that I read? And ultimately, the main point of culturally responsive text, or the outcome, especially when it comes to being used in instruction, or if we're trying to support the education of our children, is to help them to really engage with text and help them to love reading and to be able to think about reading. And it's so much easier to get some of those concepts if there's some sort of connection, a mirror, a window, or a sliding glass door. Oh gosh, and so many more comments came in right after that. Children have what they are given. Okay, I would say that the way we speak or behave in our homes become our kids, become our kids. They're observing us. You said a word. I don't know who said that, but you said a word. Thank you so much. And how do we mediate that or balance that with the books that we have? What they see is also what in the books is what they observe as well. Okay, I got to take a drink. This is fire here. Thank you so much, participants. But we're going to go on to the next slide. And I just want to give us 1 minute to reflect on this graphic. I hope everybody can see it. You know, this just kind of, you know, to wrap up just, the collective definition of culturally responsive text that we just formulated together. I want you to see the statistics about the diversity in terms of race and culture that's in children's books. This was a study done by the Cooperative Children's Book Center at the School of Education, the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Shout out to them. They're doing a lot of great work in terms of literacy and education. And each of those students represent some other, some different culture. And look at the percentages of the books that they read that is a mirror for them. I'm just going to be quiet for a second and let you take a look at that. What does that make you think when you look at that? So if we're talking about somebody like myself, I identify as African American, there would only be 10% of the books that I read in school or even at home reflect me or a mirror. If I'm Asian, only 7%. As a matter of fact, a bear, yeah, sure. Word, right? Sure enough. Yes, animals have the highest percentage, and of course, white, as you see from that statistic, by a long shot, white children would have more of a reflection of themselves. And not just that, what else do you notice about that young white child? What do you notice about the reflections that he has when he looks in books?
Again, curiosity, positive regard. It's expansive.
So he has a variety. He can see himself as a king, as a sports figure, as I'm not exactly sure what's in the big mirror, or, a pet lover, and that's important because sometimes we mean well, like, especially if we're maybe a teacher in the classroom, or even as parents, family members, housekeepers, or even doctors. Maybe we have text for children, especially if we're pediatricians, we want to bring in something to engage the students, the children while they're waiting a while, especially if there's something really serious going on. And we have these texts, but are all the texts that you have about BIPOC children, Black, Indigenous, children of color, Asian, Latino X, American First Nations or indigenous children, are they all about oppression? Are they all about crime? Are they all about abuse? Okay, so we know that a lot of our children are experiencing those things. But is that all that they're experiencing? Don't they experience some joy in their lives? Don't they experience some happiness? Don't they think about what the world could be as well? We have that. So when we pick text, you know, it's great for us to reflect, you know, some of the serious realities that some of our children go through. But remember, there's a lot of joy with our children too. Okay, so just like that child at the end, we're 50%, okay, of the text reflect him, and not only in one way. We want to not only have a mirror, but we want to have a variety of mirrors. And just for your information, CEJ dropped in the chat the report on the lack of diversity in New York City public schools. And we're definitely working on that. That's a wonderful thing about being with MSQI. We actually support schools in mediating some of that lack of diversity. So thank you so much for having us here to be able to share this. But we're going to go to the next slide, and we're going to get into some nitty gritty here. When I say nitty gritty, we're going to actually do an activity. So this is a tool you can use. You might be saying to yourself, okay, Rabin, that's great, but what do I do? What can I do as a parent, a doctor, a housekeeper, a teacher, a community member? What can I do? Well, you can be really discerning when you look at text. You can really think about when you're choosing books for the children that you care about, that you're in charge of, that you serve, that you parent, what texts are culturally responsive for them. So you can think about if it's a mirror, if it's a window, or ask yourself if it's a sliding glass door. But you can also use this diversity tool by the organization teachingtolerance.org. And if you could just drop that in the chat so that people can have a bigger version of it to look at or download when they want to. Okay, this is actually a tool that gives you different questions to think about as you're looking at text. So I want to give you a moment to browse it, okay? And then we're just going to have a really quick discussion about what you see, what you notice, or how you think it could be helpful. So just 1 minute. We're just going to browse. Okay. So that was a quick minute, right? So would anybody like to share, either in the chat or just by unmuting your mic, what you noticed or what struck you about this tool? What do you think? Is there any language that stands out to you, or any questions that you have? Would this be something that you think you could use in any sort of way? We know some people are still reading, and as a reminder, if this print is too small, I know it's, it's the resolution on a PowerPoint slide. CEJ is on it. They dropped the link in the chat so that you can actually see this document, the diversity tool. So any thoughts about that? You can unmute your mic. Oh, it's it's too small. Are you able to access the link? And I know some of us are not really working, we might be using our phones. We might be using a platform that doesn't allow us to get to the link. But what I will say is I'll read off some of the questions that are on the checklist because it is small and some of us might not be able to access it. It's a good thing when you have a printout with you. So one of the questions that, Teaching Tolerance suggests that we ask when we're thinking about culturally responsive text is, what voices does this text that we're looking at, that we're thinking about buying for our children, okay, what does this text include in terms of race, ethnicity, gender, class, age, ability? Sometimes we leave that out, ability, or also cognitive diversity, the different special needs or the different ways of knowing and moving and acting. What voices in terms of religion, place, immigration status, okay, or LGBT identity. This is a little bit old, so LGBTQ identity. Do the identities or experiences of the authors, the illustrators, we got to look at those pictures because there's a lot of power in pictures, right? Do the identities or experiences of the authors, illustrators, characters, speakers, or narrators contribute to students' diverse reading experience? So even that very first question is very, very involved. It has us thinking about not just what's in the book, but who wrote the book, who drew the book, what voices are reflected. Let me just pick another question. Question number 7. It says, consider historical, social, and cultural context in which the text was written. Is the text relevant now? So again, that's a very powerful thing because we might be saying, I have, a lot of Black students or patients or children that I take care of. And you know what? I'm going to bring them a lot of books on slavery. Okay. And that was definitely real. And is definitely a part of American history for sure that everybody, regardless of race or culture, if you're in this country, should know about. But does it relate to them right now? Maybe you could make the connection, right? Or can we, again, it goes back to that balance. Can we balance that out also with text about maybe some current Black inventors, maybe some current Black political leaders? Can we make a balance? And I'll just read one more question again, just to support us because the text is so small. We might not all be able to access all this. Does the content connect with the interests and the concerns of my student? So that's a real easy one, especially if you're a parent, what your children are into, what their hobbies are, what they like to do, what they like to talk about. So that's also a way to be culturally responsive as well. But I'm going to quickly give you an example of how you can actually use this, and then you're going to practice it. So if we can go to the next slide. And if we can, I'm not sure if I actually have this article linked, but even if we don't, I have the text big for you. So I'm just going to model just in a few seconds how I might use the tool or use, what we learned about mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors to look at a text. So I have an article called Young Americans Believe Leaders Their Age Should Do a Better Job. And it's from a really great resource online that's free for you all parents. I love free, right? Especially in these times, it's a little rough economically. A free resource called News ELA. Some people call it News Ella, but you can look up text, articles, and things of that nature. So watch me and listen as I role play or pretend to be reading this article and thinking, is this something that I want to use for my child? Okay, so let's see. So my child is, we're going to say in this scenario, about 13 years old, and she identifies as she, is somebody that's really intrigued by the election, that happened recently. So let me read this. Young people want change in this fall's election season year. Okay, well, right there, that matches her interest. I think about that question that says, number 10, does it match the interest? Okay, so that's one good thing about this text. She'll be interested in this. She'll want to read it. In particular, they want a change that benefits their generation. They want younger people in government leadership positions. A poll was recently conducted by the Associated Press NORC Center for Public Affairs Research and MTV. The poll was about the upcoming midterm election in early November. Okay, so this was about another election, you know, a while back, but still, that's kind of that's current. That's current events. That's about their lived experiences right now. About my child's lived experiences. Okay, and then it would be something for us to talk about. Okay, I'm kind of getting into this. I'm liking it for my daughter and for me. The poll found most Americans 15 to 34 think voting in the midterm elections gives their generation some say. Okay, so, you know, I'm thinking about question number 1, where it says, what voices does this text include? And the fact that they did a poll, a survey, means that they really did ask young people. They're not just talking about them. So I like that. I like that. So, and 15 to 34, well, she's a little bit younger than that, but that's pretty close. So it could be a mirror for all those other things, but maybe it could be a window also for her to look ahead to what she might be able to think about and the power she might have once she becomes older and able to vote. Oh, almost like a sliding glass door, like the possibilities. Okay, so cut scene. That was the end of that role play. So you see what I did? I basically took a look at this and I thought about both what Dr. Rudine Sims Bishop said about mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors, and thought about my specific child. Because this could be culturally responsive for my child, but it might not be culturally responsive for your child, because you might have a different child that you care for at home, at school, in the doctor's office, in the community. So that's just an example. But really quickly, because I know we're running short of time, I want to give you an opportunity. So we're going to go to the next slide. Well, we already talked about, well, I'll just sum up by saying that we can use it if you're wondering like how to use this tool, besides choosing text, just to think critically. And I'm going to say a highlight number 2, especially for you parents out there. It provides a language, or number 2 and 3, provides a language to describe and discuss with your child's school the text through an equity lens. So a lot of times we come to school and we don't feel empowered. We feel like we don't know enough to talk to our child's teacher or principal about what we think they should be learning or what books they should be learning with. But this gives you a way, because a lot of teachers are also learning about this as well. It gives you some common language that they're using as well to talk about those choices. So we're going to go to the next slide. I have a chance for you to practice. So in the chat, if you can drop the article, Henrietta Lacks Immortal Cells. And Henrietta Lacks was an African-American woman that lived many years ago and went into the doctor's office for, treatment, and something happened. So I want you to read or just browse this article, okay, and consider using either the diversity tool. I know some of you have access to it. If not, you don't even need any paper. You don't even need any tool. Think about what we said about mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors. And think as you read that, is this something that you would use with your child or the child that you care for or the children that you interact with? Is this culturally responsive? How and why? And Elizabeth, if you could go to the next slide. For those of you that can't access that article, I have it written here. Again, I know it's a little bit small, but even if you read just a bit of it, if you can see a bit of it, it will give you something that you can think about. So I'm just going to set the timer just to like maybe 3 minutes just to browse. Okay. And then we're going to talk about, will we consider this a culturally responsive text? So enjoy. And I'm gonna, sorry to interrupt your thought. We have again about another minute or so. I see, lo siento, okay. I was told not to switch languages, but no, unfortunately, it's not in Spanish. But if you have the Spanish translation, maybe Ricardo can read maybe just the first 2 paragraphs in Spanish, and that might be helpful. So my apologies. I will next time consider that. Thank you for holding me accountable and helping me to support you and other families that engage in this work. Thank you so much. Okay. So if we can wrap up our last thoughts about this text, and could you go to the next slide, Elizabeth? All right. So let's just, we don't have to necessarily use just these particular questions, but please do unmute your mic or type into the chat. What did you think? What information did you find out about this text by thinking about it in terms of mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors, or by using the tool? Would you use this with your child? Why or why not? What could your child learn from the text? Because again, a lot of you are basically teaching children yourselves. So what could they learn? And if you wanted to use something like this in the school, what could you say to your child's teacher or the principal of their school? So you can take any one of those topics or just whatever you'd like to share. What was it like looking at this text? Well, don't be shy. Remember, we said that we were going to participate in any way, particularly because we learn from each other, for sure. Oh, thank you. Oh, okay, got it. Thank you. I forgot that there's, this is again, hot fire. We've got some translation going on, so it's coming. All right, I'll be patient. But if while that translation is going on, if there's anybody else who has something to share, I know before we heard from, I think, Sharina and Blanca and Veronica. Barbara, Jane. And again, shout out to Natasha for doing extra work translating as well. And while that's coming, I would say that, one of the things that we often notice is that when you think about text through these mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors, it makes you think like, wow, like sometimes it makes you think about the books that you had when you were growing up, right? Like, did anybody ever take the time to think if the text, the books that they bought you for, either to read at home or in school, whether or not they were culturally responsive, whether or not they were things that were mirrors, that reflected you, or whether or not they taught you about other worlds, or to have a balance. Did anybody ever do that? Sometimes people, that comes up when they do this activity. A lot of people also find that when they're thinking about what the child could learn, what your child could learn, especially from this text about Henrietta Lacks, that it connects to so many different things. You know, it connects to history, it connects to learning about science in many ways. Right now, we're living in a pandemic, right? So not all of us have equal access to healthcare. So think about what Henrietta Lacks went through, you know, decades ago when it came to that. Oh, wow. That's a lot. Okay. So, I didn't see, I don't know if you know, I didn't see the English version of that either. Remember, I'm fluent in Spanglish. That's it. Can anybody, maybe either Natasha or Ricardo, read out just for the sake of time, or share out? Oh, okay. I think these were okay. Translation of the questions. I see. Understood. Thank you. Ricardo's working overtime. CJ. Okay. So I can't really see the faces, but I know that we are basically at time. Okay, so again, if there's any ideas that came through Facebook Live, or if you're a little shy, or if you were speaking, just remember you got to unmute because I couldn't hear you. Just remember that there's a lot of implications for this and what we've learned today. And you basically said it even earlier when you were talking about your reflections on those quotes. I think that was really moving for a lot of people. So we're just going to go to the wrap-up slide, the next slide. Okay, so in terms of like what we can do next, I know there's a lot of different things that you're probably thinking, but one thing I would like you to consider is, how can you as a parent, a family member, a community leader, a pediatrician, a housekeeper, a teacher, we had so many different diverse people here, and says a lot of times we think about diversity and we don't think about, what we do. How could you use this learning today in what you do? And how does the learning relate to the current social climate and support equity? Remember, some people say that we're going through a dual pandemic. There's C-19, but there's also the pandemic of racial injustice. What can we do, as parents, family members, community members, teachers? What can we do in terms of affecting that, or speaking to that, or helping our students and children understand that through the text that we choose? I see something, Blanca put something in the chat. Can I get a little help with translation? I think I know what that says, but I want to definitely be accurate. I don't know if Ricardo and Natasha or even Elizabeth, I don't know if you are bilingual. Oh, okay, thank you. Yes, so you would like to use this. Yes, thank you so much. So I'm glad that that's the feeling that we have. Yeah, okay, thank you. Yes, I'm glad that that's the feeling that we have at the end of this, because a lot of times we go to workshops and it's nice, but we don't really come away with something that we can actually use. So you have not one, not two, but 3 tools tonight that you can use. You have that diversity tool that looks like a checklist. You have that article or the terminology from Dr. Udine Sims Bishop, Mirrors, Windows, and Sliding Glass Doors. You have that infographic, you have the data, you have hard scientific facts about the diversity in children's books that you can use, whether you're talking with your child's teacher, principal, or maybe you come together as a community. Maybe you have a book club, a children's book club, a virtual book club, and you think about these things when you're choosing books for the children in your apartment building, on your block, in your neighborhood, in your church, your community center, your synagogue, wherever you worship, your mosque. So there's definitely a lot of ways that you can use this. So thank you for saying that. And I'm hoping a lot of people feel the same way. We're not going to leave you with nothing, okay? We're going to leave you with a little nods, but we also have some resources, okay? So you're going to get, as a member of the CEJ group, a whole resource packet, links to News ELA, the MSQI Middle School Quality Initiative diverse book list. So we're going to give you some books to choose from, the article, and also I have something new I didn't even have time to put there. There's an organization called Teaching Reading, run by Nick Glass. I just met with him today in my organization, Middle School Quality Initiative, and he has a whole website where it doesn't have books, but it has things that you can do with books. It has ways in which you can determine if it's culturally responsive for your child. It has lessons, it has activities, and they have almost all the latest books that have come out. They even have interviews with authors, things of that nature, and even reading some of the excerpts, even some of the authors reading the books. So imagine how great that would be. So I'm gonna put that, I just found out about it today, but I'm gonna put that in that resource folder. So I just wanna say thank you. Thank you so much for engaging tonight. It was wonderful, especially at the beginning with that article. I couldn't keep up with all the brilliant ideas. Just remember that you are essential. If you are on this line tonight, you took the time out of your day to do this. You are essential. You are important to the children that you serve. My name is Rabin. You can reach me out to me at rnickens@schools.nyc.gov. Or also you can contact Liberation Schools. They have a lot of other workshops available to you. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for putting that. I appreciate being here. So you all have a wonderful, wonderful evening. And I wish you well and thank you for all that you do. Yes, and thank you, Ricardo. Thank you, Ricardo, interpreter. Elizabeth on the Wheels of Steel of the PowerPoint, and also Natasha, Empress Natasha. I'm calling her that. She doesn't call herself that, but she's the reason that we're all together. So I'm going to shout out Natasha Capers of the CEJ. Yes, yes.
Have a good night. And we'll send out all the materials in English and in Spanish soon. Good night.
Thanks, Blanca.
Thank you.